You are a massive loser. You're a loser, a failure. You'll never amount to anything because you're a massive loser and you suck. Not just at poker, your life suck, you loser. I didn't mean any of that. I apologise. Let me ask you, how did that make you feel? You know I'm dicking around, right? But a little tiny bit of your brain wasn't too happy about being called a massive loser or a failure. Don't worry, by the way, I know you're on Team Winners. Only winners watch these videos. I want to talk about losing in poker, and I want to help you with the phenomenon of losing in poker. Everything we do here is about that, of course, but I want to specifically talk about dealing with losses. So we're going to talk about it in a big picture sense, and also a couple of tactical tips for losing during a session. Now, this is a really weird area peculiar to poker. I'm sure you've heard the phrase losing is part of the game, but let's just think about that for a second and not just kind of blindly accept it. I think it's sort of one thing to say that, but it's another thing to actually experience it, right? And I know you know how bad it feels when you lose at poker. We can get steamed up or upset or aggressive about one hand, right? Just one hand, and we know we're going to play thousands of hands even this month or year alone. And then if we lose generally, like in an evening or in a tournament or in a week, we can get even more emotionally affected and feel bad even before you start thinking about the money that you can lose playing poker. So losing is bad, but losing is part of the game. We're playing this game which looks like it's about winning and losing and skill and all of that stuff, and it kind of is. But there's also a massive luck factor in poker. It's probably better for your sort of poker view if you think of that as a randomness factor. And even winning players are playing with very small margins. So if you're a fantastic cash game player, you are going to lose maybe 30% of your sessions if you're in a good game. If you're moving up the limits and you're in tougher games, you're probably going to lose 40% of your sessions. If you're a tournament player, even with a big edge, you're going to bust maybe 75, 80% of your tournaments without cashing, possibly higher. That is a lot of losing, right? And it's obviously also drills down into the session itself where you're going to lose a lot of pots. And I can't overstate how different that makes poker to everything else you do, right? If you've tried any other activity like art or swimming or dancing or anything, learning a language, anything, if you try that activity and you're bad at it or you lose at it for, a few weeks, I can pretty much guarantee that most of those activities you won't be doing anymore, right? Because as human beings, we don't like that feeling. It's a bad feeling. And that feeling of losing often translates to feeling a feeling of failure. And this is conditioned from when we're very little. Blame our school system, basically. If you can't do something, you're given a bad grade, you feel like you've lost or you failed or whatever. And so usually we don't pursue those activities. We only do stuff we're kind of quite good at or we really, really enjoy. Poker is different, as I've said. Losing comes as part of it. So we have to work to overcome those losses and the feeling that that's going to create. Because going forward, even if you become one of the best poker players in the world or a day-to-day pro, you're still going to have these feelings when you lose of failure, of negativity, of the fact that you're doing things wrong. And you might be doing nothing wrong in poker. You can play brilliantly in having a losing session. It really is a bizarre game. So that's enough rambling. Let's get to some concrete stuff to helping you deal with the problem of losing and the feeling of losing. Step one is to accept everything I've just said. So accept it's part of the game. Step one is acceptance. It's about step 5 in the stages of grief, isn't it? Or is it the last one? But number 1 here is acceptance, because you must accept that losing is part of the game. That's the first step and always will be part of your game, even if you're winning, right? Bizarre, but true. It's the first step in not being affected by it and not allowing it to affect your play. Because what we're really driving towards here is you enjoying poker even when you have bad sessions, and critically, you being able to play well even when you're losing. Now, if you think every time you have a losing session that you've done something wrong or you failed in some way, then you're never going to get to that point. Your emotions and your feeling about poker is always going to go up and down with your results. If you can accept that those down sessions and those down periods of time are part of the game and just an incentive to work harder, and that you should really focus on your process, not your results anyway, get that level of acceptance that you can't always control your results, then you're going to be well on the way to being a better poker player and enjoying your poker a lot more. here's point number 2, which is a little bit of a reframe. It has to happen to you. It has to happen to you. Has to happen to you. So I think it's one thing to accept that losing is part of poker, right? That's one thing. It's quite another thing to accept that you losing is part of poker, right? Because when it gets specific to us, we feel it, right? If I say losing is part of poker, you go, yeah, losing is part of poker. But if you actually take 5 bad beats in a row, well, now losing is part of your life, and that's completely different to losing is part of poker. So it's very important to take the next step, which is you are going to lose pots. You are going to suffer bad beats. You are going to have losing days, weeks, and maybe months. Not maybe so much if you've got good game selection, you might be able to avoid that, but probably not, right? So it has to happen to you. And here's the tricky bit. As you become a more winning player, it has to happen to you in a worse way, because winning players take more bad beats than losing players, by definition, because we get it in good more often, right? So we're going to take more bad beats. So although we don't lose as much overall as a losing or worse player, we are going to take those horrible bad beats where we actually did our job and got the money in good, but it doesn't work out for us. So you must accept that it has to happen to you. And if you're going to be a winning player, those bad beats have to happen to you. Now, I understand if it happens too much, it's overwhelming. It's very hard to actually accept that. But I think just doing this kind of thinking and work on your frame and state of mind before you play away from the table can be incredibly valuable. Maybe write some of this down and have it in front of you if you really struggle with taking bad beats and losses. All right, number 3, win rates are small. Win rates are small. Win rates are small. So this is a massive misconception, and something that I find our students on Breakthrough Poker Coaching find it hard to, I think everybody finds it hard to actually get this in their DNA so they actually fully understand it. And that is that most games you play, it's win or lose, right? You're either going to, like if we have a running race and I'm faster than you, I'm going to win 10 times out of 10 if I'm a significantly faster runner. Maybe 99 times out of 100 because one time I pull up with a hamstring problem, I don't know. But if we play poker and I'm a significantly better poker player than you, I'm probably only going to win, 6 times out of 10 or 7 times out of 10 if I've got a big edge. So those edges are small because of the variance, the luck factor. And what that means in real terms for you is that you may be way better than your competition, but your graph is still going to go up and down. You're still going to have to deal with losses, and you're going to have to deal with people better than you beating you. So if you can accept that the margins are small, it changes your expectation, right? I always give a kind of wry smile when I hear somebody go, I finished 20th in a tournament. The dream has died. It's not to be this time. Well, everybody wants to win the tournament when they enter it, right? But that's not your expectation. Your expectation is that you won't cash. If you're a good player in the field, your expectation might be on average you finish in the top, 30%, right? Or top 25% if you're really good. But if you finish 20th out of 1,000 players, you're way above expectation. Now, the human part of us thinks, I could win this, I've gone deep. And you actually feel sad that you didn't win it, which is dumb because actually you've massively overachieved in that tournament. So it's really important to accept that the margins are small, right? A good cash game margin might be just, 3 or 4 big blinds per 100 hands, poker bet, big blinds per 100 hands and up. A sit and go good win rate might be nowadays in the higher limits might be like 5% and the lower limits might be 10, 15%. In tournaments, a return on investment win rate might be like 20%, maybe up to 50% if you've got a really big edge. But these are not massive returns. And also they don't happen immediately. You don't put your money in and then get that much back. It happens over time. So you'll have periods of time where you're not making money. And then other periods of time, especially if you play tournaments where you hit a big win, you make a lot of money. But if you can accept these things, accept losing is part of the game, accept it has to happen to you, and then accept that your win rates are small, you're going to be psychologically way better set up to take bad beats, to take those dips, to take those losing runs. All right, number 4 is, I love writing this one in these videos, is work on your game or get better, I could write. It always makes me smile because it's like, yes, obviously, Nick, we want to get better at poker. But this comes from when when I had when I had sessions with a coach, he used to say to me, I used to say, I'm getting really unlucky. Look at my, look at my EV. I'm running way under expectation. I'm having a terrible month. And he used to go, okay, work harder and get better. Because there's nothing we can do to control the bad luck. We can control how good we are at poker. So really your response to losing should always be, I'm going to go and work harder. Now the challenging bit is that should also be your response to winning. I'm going to go and work harder. Because working harder, getting better, studying more is how you beat this game, right? It's not by getting lucky over the long term. It's not by having a rabbit's foot on your cards that brings you luck. It's not by, feeling like you're running good. It's by getting better at poker and getting better at your decisions. Now, I know it's a super obvious point, but when you're losing and you're feeling negative about your poker, it can be really easy to forget that. The best antidote to a losing run is action to make yourself a better player. Focus on your decisions, which is what you can control. Don't waste energy on your results, which you cannot control. It's a hard thing to get into our psyche, but it is the truth about poker. All right, now let's talk about when you're actually losing during a session, because it's very important to deal with that as well. And I'm going to really impress upon you that you should have the I'll deal with that later mantra. So I'll deal with that later. I'll deal with that later. So the problem with losing when we're playing a session is that when we actually have a loss, when we lose a pot, especially if it's a big pot or a significant pot to us, but we're during a session, all of that emotion we've talked about throughout this video will hit you during your session. It's very easy to feel negative about what you've done. It's very easy to feel, just almost depressed about how your session's going and kind of want those chips back, right? And want things to be different, want the world to be different, but it's not. And the cards that are coming out now don't know that you've just suffered a bad beat or you've lost a pot or whatever. So our mission really as poker players is to shake off the losses, stay focused in the moment and keep making good decisions, what we can control, and also focus on the positive. Think about the opportunity we still have in the tournament. Okay, we used to have 90 big blinds, now we've got 30, but 30 still gives us an opportunity to win the tournament. So always be looking forwards. Now the challenge you'll have is that your brain will fixate on that loss, because a loss or a failure, which is how our brain interprets loss, is like a big red flashing light. So you're going to be trying to keep playing and your brain's going to be going, what about that hand we played? Should we have done it differently? God, if I'd only folded. I don't know why I called. I don't know why I made that. So it's going to have this open loop where it's kind of trying to find answers to why you failed, right? That's what the brain's going to do. And that can devastate the rest of your session. So what you need to do is close that loop. Now you can't close that loop by doing analysis at the table, right? Because that's again going to interfere with the decisions you're making right now. So what I want you to do is tell your brain, that was an interesting hand. I'm going to study that later. I will look at that after this session. And what you could actually do to take it to the next level is actually write that down. So write down the hand on your phone or in a notepad, whatever. Look at the mime for a phone and the mime for a notepad. This is sophisticated stuff. Write down that hand because that's telling your brain, I'm going to look at this later. And then you can actually write down, that was an interesting hand, I'll look at it later. If you really struggle with this, write this stuff out before the session. So write out, I've just played a big pot. It didn't go my way. That was interesting. I'm going to study it later and see what I can learn. Something like that, right? Whatever speaks to you so that you can look at that when you suffer a bad beat or lose a big pot. This might seem a bit silly now, but trust me, it can be very valuable in the moment. If you've ever taken a bad beat or lost a big pot, you'll understand the value of having this in your armory. It's important to close that loop, stop thinking about that loss and focus back on the opportunity at hand. And finally, dealing with losing, break the pattern of a losing run. So break patterns. If you're in a losing run over a few sessions, obviously it can get demoralizing. Obviously it can sap your enthusiasm for poker. I often get asked whether we should take a break in a losing run or whether we should keep playing. My answer is always the same. It depends if you're capable of playing your A game or not, or if it's affecting your decisions. Because the cards don't know if you're on a losing run or a winning run. Your next session could be a massive loss. Your next session could be a massive win. Unless you can't play well, in which case it's much more likely to be a loss, right? So the question is, can you play well? If you are in a losing run, break your pattern. And what I mean by that is don't keep plowing away in this negative mindset. Do something to change it. Either take a complete break from poker or play a different game. This works wonders for me. Like jump into an Omaha game if you play Omaha, or a mixed game or something like that. Or jump into, you know, some heads-up satellites at low limits. Anything that heads-up satellites, heads-up poker or satellites or whatever. Anything to change the game. Another great thing you can do is get some of the fun back. Have a home game, attend a home game, play a fun tournament at your local casino that isn't going to affect you too much financially. Do something to break that pattern, because we don't want to get into a negative mindset when we sit down. We'll take a couple of beats, which we can't control, remember, and then we're immediately back in that why always me losing mindset, and we need to get out of that. All right, plenty to go out there. Turned into quite a long video, but this is such an important topic. You've got to be able to assimilate losses and keep playing well, both in a session and over time, if you're going to be a winning poker player. And you're a human being, so all of the reactions I've talked about are totally natural. I've given you some tools there to deal with them. I wish you lots of success with it. And hey, I hope you don't have to deal with it this year. I hope there are no losing runs for you. If you've got value from this video, then do the right thing. Give me a Facebook thumbs up and give it a share so other people can get value from it as well. And I'd love to hear from you. Write a comment below. I have great fun doing these videos and I really hope they help you out. Let me know if they do, but also ask me any questions you've got and anything else I can help with. I'll jump into those comments over the next few days. All right, I will see you in another video. Run good, because that's the hard part.